tip number one, understanding your cash flow. And I think this one's super underrated. You know, most people, like you said, like they think like the things that are going to transform their finances are like these big, like sexy ideas of what they have to be doing. And it's like, no, like at the end of the day, you got to understand like the ins and outs of your money. Like, how much is coming in? How much is going out? What do all these expenses look like on a monthly basis? Like, what are your obligations when it comes to having to pay for things? And I don't think enough people really understand like where their money's actually going. And so usually the first place when I start working with someone is like helping them understand their cash flow, you know, like understanding, hey, what does your income actually look like? You know, like when it's coming in, like how much are you getting paid? When are you getting paid? Like, what's the frequency of it? Understanding all those little intricacies of what's coming in, what's going out. If you have debt, like all of those things like that. But Lauren, I guess question for you, like, where do you think people should start? You know, if they want to get a better understanding of what their cash flow is, where should they start with that?
Yeah, so I'll just give an example from my own life. Whenever I started my debt-free journey, like actually wanted to plan out when I wanted to pay off my debts and like have a plan for that, I sat down for the first time ever. Like I've actually never been like terrible with money. Like I've never had credit card debt or anything like that, but I never knew where my money was going. And I was essentially living paycheck to paycheck. So the first thing that I did was I actually sat down literally with pen and paper. Like you can't make it like harder than that. You know, I sat down with pen and paper and I pulled up, I had my computer there, and I pulled up like my credit card statements and my bank statements and really took note of where my money was going. So the first thing I put on that paper was like how much I made every month, like what my paycheck actually was. And then I just sort of started stacking things below it. Like, okay, I have this amount of money coming into my account every month. Now, where is every single one of those dollars going, right? So rent, it was my car payment, it was my student loans, you know, it was groceries, it was eating out, it was all these different things. And then I really had a good idea of like, okay, I have this money coming in. Now this is exactly where all of my money's going and where it should be going. And then you get to see where your money's going that maybe you don't want it to be going. So I think the biggest thing is just sitting down and looking at every single transaction. It's a little humbling. It's a little scary because, you know, checking these things can be scary for people, but this is really the first place you need to go. Whether you want to do that on a pen and paper or on like a Google Sheet or whatever, I think the biggest thing is just to take inventory of your current spending habits and of your current expenses. So that's really where I would start. Just super basic, but understanding that high level of like where your money is actually going.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, to be fair, I think some people will think like, oh, well, looking back through the last few months, like I don't want to do that. And so like the flip side of that is you could just record like, all right, from today moving forward over the next month, like what are you spending your money on? You know, like writing down in a journal, like every single purchase you made. But yeah, that's exactly where I always tell people to start is like, you got to literally like print out your bank statements, take a highlighter to it and like color code everything. Like, all right, was this like a basic necessity? You know, like was this utilities or rent or any of these debt payments? Like where was all the miscellaneous or BS spending in there? And it should be like glaringly obvious after you do that. Like where are the holes in your budget? Like where do you have problem areas when it comes to your spending? Maybe the problem area is you're spending way too much money on like rent and utility, like your basic necessities just to survive are just way too high, you know? And so either you're living in an area that's too expensive or you're not making enough money. But I would say for most people, it's probably that like the BS spending, the unnecessary, like frivolous spending, like that's where most people are getting out of control with. And when you go through this process, like that's going to become so obvious. And like you said, it's going to be such a humbling process to go through.
Yeah, I think for myself, I quickly realized that like I was spending money that I shouldn't have been spending on stupid things, you know? Yeah. So then for me, like I just changed around what I wanted to be doing. Like my goal and we'll talk about goals and, you know, what you want to do with your money later. But for me, it was more of like the debt freedom part of it. So I really wanted to like prioritize my debt. Yeah. So for me, my money shifted around whenever I listed it all out. And then I was like, ooh, now my debt's going to be at the top there. So my other miscellaneous spending, it's going to go away now. So, you know, you really get to list all these things out and then make decisions, you know, going forward. But yeah, it's a little painful to, I think, get going, like you said. So you could just start from like, okay, I'm going to start in, you know, whatever month you're in, I'm going to start now and see where my money's actually going. Don't change anything. Just, you know, start from here and mark down every single time you're spending something and then, you know, track it that way if it's too scary to look backwards.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like, I think, you know, to be clear, it sounds like you and I are both kind of saying like, you know, there's, you don't necessarily have to go through this process and say, all right, these are all the things I have to cut. It's not that. It's just like, you should go through this process, get a full understanding, and then ask yourself, like, is this spending in line with where I want to be? Or like, does the spending actually make sense? Like, is it going to get me closer, or is all of these things that I'm spending on, is it pushing me further away? You know, it's not, I don't think it's, I certainly don't feel like it's my place to tell you like, hey, you shouldn't be spending your money on this thing. Right. Yeah. But I could tell you, hey, if you want to get there, spending your money over here isn't helping you get there, you know? And so like, that's what I mean. Like when you go through this, like the areas where like, all right, I'm probably overspending here, that's going to be obvious. And then you can see, all right, if I were to cut this down a little bit, how much can I actually free up? And then how could that actually translate into like real progress, you know? But yeah, like, I don't know. I feel like too many people don't realize that like that without tracking what you're spending, like there's just so many things that are going to fall through the cracks.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of pushback on like this first step here is like time. And I think, you know, we hear it all the time. I don't have time to do that. I don't want to do that. Okay. I want to see your screen time on your phone. Like I want to see where your time is going, because I know that we have at least, and Nick, once you get going on this, you can, it only takes like maybe 10 minutes a week, you know, to like sit down and actually like, you know, check things off. Of course, this is going to take a little bit of time to set up at first, but yeah, I think a lot of things fall through the cracks when you're not paying attention to it. And like we're saying, this first step here is not to change anything. We just want to see where it's actually going. And so that you understand that and can make adjustments if you want moving forward. If you don't want to change anything, great. But I think there's going to be a lot of places in here where, especially for me, when I started my debt-free journey, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be spending there when I have this big goal of debt freedom. So I'm going to start shifting that money that I was, you know, spending on God knows what, and putting it towards my debt. And I think this step is what will help you understand that. But just knowing the full picture first would be like the number one thing.
Yeah. And I genuinely, I don't think I've met a single person who genuinely doesn't have the time to do this, right? Like if you were to sit down and you go through a full month of spending, like it'll probably take you 30 minutes, maybe it'll take you an hour. But then like you said, moving forward, this is only going to take you a couple minutes a day at most, or maybe like 10 to 20 minutes a week to do. Like if you don't have that time, like you're probably lying, or you're probably like spending it doing things that aren't making an actual difference for you. But then the follow-up question I'd ask them is like, okay, well, how much longer can you go without finding the time to prioritize this? Like you're probably in a bad situation because you're saying, I don't have time to focus on my finances.
No, for sure. And I hate that too. I always compare this to like personal hygiene, like dental hygiene. Like we have to like brush our teeth and like shower so that we like don't stink and we don't get like cavities and stuff. And it's like, I don't know where money just became like this thing that we just don't take care of. Like it's something we work so hard for every single day, but we just absolutely neglect like the care of it. And like, I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, okay, I'm doing these things because I have to. Like, I'm also managing my money because I have to. Like, I literally work 40 hours plus a week for this. Like, why are we just completely just like neglecting this side of our finances? I don't know. Doesn't make sense. But anyway, tip one is to understand your cash flow. And then, you know, we'll obviously make some adjustments from there.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to say it. Like taking the time to think about your money and to look at it should be just as important as like brushing your teeth every single morning.
The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.